Your journey from Marikana to energy, entrepreneurship is powerful, but not typical. What was the moment where you said enough is enough? I am trying to do better. And I just want you to just go back to your background, who you are, and how did you start your journey on this
Mm.
Hakem energy profile you have today?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Marikana in the Northwest, right? And I always say before the Marikana massacre, when I got to Joburg, I couldn't even tell people I'm from Marikana because nobody knew where Marikana is. And I think that's important because a lot of times we come from nowhere, literally. We come from places that nobody even know, where it is. But I'm a triplet by birth, and I was raised by my single mother, by a single mom. And I remember just growing up and seeing her going through difficulties of her own and trying to navigate her own journey. My dad at the time when they were married was very abusive. And I remember having the courage to ask my mom, why are you still staying here? And she said to me, if I leave, I'm not gonna have any means to take care of you guys, right? And you guys are triplets, it's a lot, it's not even one. And I remember, I think in the depth of my heart, I thought to myself at that young age, it means when women are not empowered, they stay in toxic relationships because the people who are funding the lifestyles are the ones which are actually abusing them. And I think for me, even though I didn't understand it at that young age, that's where my why began, where I then wanted to make sure that I don't have to go through the circumstances that my mom went through, but I'm self-sufficient, I'm independent, I'm able to build my own journey that allows me to make my own decisions, right? And I think that's what happened. So my mom then eventually divorces and she go work, and we go and stay with my grandmother. And my grandmother was such a passionate community builder and an impact leader in her own ways. And again, Langelihle, I didn't know these things. I couldn't put the label to them. I just saw a crazy woman. When we were poor and we didn't have much, she will still share the little that we had with other people. And it didn't make sense at the time. I mean, oftentimes we would argue about it to say, why did you share the last maize meal? Because it's the last maize meal that we had, so you get surrounded by that. And I think when I started thinking about entrepreneurship, I think I thought about those stories and that journey in terms of how do I become what my mom and my grandmother were as impact leaders, but do it from a sustainable perspective, and I've always then thought entrepreneurship for me was going to be a tool that, number one, gets me out of poverty. But I knew if I get out of poverty, I'm not just getting myself, I'm going to get my children out of poverty. I almost break that chain of poverty and start creating a new generation that's coming that doesn't have to suffer from the poverty that I suffered from. But number two, if I was going to be an impact leader and change the lives of women, because I saw through my mom and my grandmother that when women are impacted, they often able to go back to their communities and replicate that impact. So if I was going to become an impact leader and do it in a sustainable way, perhaps entrepreneurship was again a vehicle that was going to enable me to do that, right? And I mean, I always say to my kids, in our times, we didn't even have career guidance. We didn't know, right? You're good in maths and you're good in accounting, and your teacher say you're gonna do something that has to do with accounting. And that's what happened. I studied accounting. And when I was done, I worked for 6 years in corporate, as an accountant. And I hated the job. I mean, I hated it, I really didn't like it at all. And I remember my last job, I was working for one of the mines, and I thought, I don't want to do this. And I think that's when we started thinking, let's try entrepreneurship and let's see how it actually goes. And I think even before we started this conversation, we were talking with you around starting where you are with what you have. And that's exactly what I did. I really started where I was with what I had. and started really growing businesses. And to date, it's 14 years later. I've been an entrepreneur. I've got shareholding in different companies. We do different things in different industries. And Hakem Energies, which is the energy side of it, is the last part of the business that I've just founded. So I've been building and growing businesses for the past 14 years.
That's so amazing. I'm just wondering, like, as a startup, to advise someone who's starting up his entrepreneurial journey as an experienced entrepreneur yourself, um, how do you identify it's the time to now quit because you're in a venturing? How can you identify it's not worth it to continue in your entrepreneurial route? And how do you identify a problem as an entrepreneur?
So I think let's start with identifying the problems, because the problems becomes the ultimate opportunities, right? I often talk about the difference between invention and innovation. And I think a lot of young entrepreneurs today, they're crazy about the idea of invention. They want to be the first one who did something. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I'm not against it. But what I'm saying is it's also okay to start with innovation before we invent, because invention takes long for the product to actually get into the market, for you to start making money. And that's why, for me, I think a lot of entrepreneurs then do fail in that first 3 years, because if it's going to take you that long to start and getting the product in the market and actually making revenue out of the business, by the time you start doing that, you are out, because you don't have that sustenance, during the process. Whereas innovation can help you build up gradually and naturally, right? While you want to do other big things. So I always say it's okay to crawl before we walk, and it's okay to walk before we run. And sometimes there is the ambition to just wake up and start sprinting, and it doesn't work like that, And I think when we look at the energy space that we decided to look at, for me, it was around energy poverty. Where I come from in Marikana, and I'm sure where you come from, there's still a lot around energy poverty. People don't have access to electricity. If there's electricity, there's a lot of load reduction. People still rely on coal or wood or paraffin. And then there's so many socioeconomic dilemmas that comes with energy poverty. So for me, that was a real problem. And innovation then allowed me to look at what are the resources that we have currently in the country, that we can build a very specific value proposition for the marginalized communities, so that we can make LPG as a cleaner source of cooking available and accessible to those communities. So I think my advice is, look around your communities, look around your everyday life, and start understanding the real problems, right? And look at how do we solve the real problems, and also start understanding the value chains of this market. I always say, if you have a sweet, start thinking about that proactively. What is the value chain of this sweet? Where is it manufactured? Who manufactured it? What is the plastic that is wrapping it? Who does that? The branding that is on the sweet, So we need to start actively thinking about the value chains of the things that we see, we use, we come across every single day. Because for me, those are low-hanging fruits, which are tangible and which are quick to build businesses on.
It's funny how the money system is still new to the black economy, black masses. You find a lot of black South Africans that are new to the entrepreneurial routes, or they get tenders, etc., or they earn money after their long-term jobs, and they get 1.6 million, 2 million rands, and now you're thinking, well, with all this money, I can actually go splurge. It's a lot of money, and you find those people in their businesses, etc. They go around and they get caught by SARS, and you see it in the news. How is it important for young black masses to understand the financial literacy that how money actually works as a whole?
So it's important, and I think the role of mentorship is extremely important. One thing that I've always been privileged to have, it's great mentors who have went ahead of me, who've done these things before, because then I always say, I didn't have to pay the school fees that they paid, you know. I mean, one of them has went through liquidation a couple of times, and it's a powerful to have a mentor like that, because it's almost like you will not have to go through it because they went through it and you can learn from them. So I think surround yourself with mentors, find people who've already traveled the journey, who have already done what you are trying to do. And absolutely, I agree with you, Langelihle. Self-development is one of the critical pillars of becoming an entrepreneur. You have to know your industry. You have to know the do's and the don'ts. You have to know everything that has to do with building businesses, growing businesses, establishing businesses. Because if you don't know, you will definitely be caught off guard, you know. So it is my responsibility to understand the legislations, the laws, the requirements, the do's, the don'ts, the red and the green of every single business that I participate in, you know, and nobody's going to do it for you, unfortunately. So you have to know. And I think even with financial literacy, I always say that you don't have to become an expert. You don't have to become an accountant, but you can really start understanding the nuances and the small things that matters. If your accountant give you your management account, what are the indicators that you are looking at, you know, so that you are able to question things and say, this doesn't make sense. So again, a lot of mistakes that I see a lot of businesses do is that they fully outsource the services to people, which is okay. But I'm saying you need to know, you need to be aware, you need to have levels of understanding so that when people send you reports, you are able to scrutinize them, to criticize them, and to ask questions as well. So I think those are some of the things which are important.
Is the corporate and government energy partners truly committed to energy transformation, or is it just ticking the box for women empowerment?
Interesting one, right? So I do think genuinely there are people who are still interested in doing the right things for the right reasons. And I always say the important and the powerful thing then for you as an entrepreneur, for me as an entrepreneur, is to find those people. I call them my people. I say it's important for you to find your people. These are people who believe in you. These are people who believe in your business concept and your ideas. These are people who understand what you are trying to do and who can then use their resources and their positioning to help you do what you do. I mean, the success that we have seen in the past 2 years at Hakem purely has been because of critical partners. And some of them are government and parastatals, right? So I do think there are still people who are out there whose hearts are in the right place, who want to do things for the right reasons. But I also do think there's a massive responsibility on me as the jockey and the business owner to build a very compelling business value proposition, right? Because the mistake that I see sometimes is that we become too emotional and too passionate about our businesses and not build something tangible. If the presidency called me today and say, we want to see the Hakem model, I've got presentations, I've got paperwork, I've got data, you know, I can go and present with confidence. And sometimes people are just passionate about stuff, but if they are given opportunities, they are not then able to sell those opportunities, which I believe is one of the gaps. But number two as well, going back to our point of personal development, be aware of what are these people trying to achieve, right? Because also you cannot expect people to support you if your mandate does not align with their mandate, right? Or your vision doesn't align with their vision. People help you because there is an alignment of some sort. So if you look at the work that we're doing at Hakem, it talks a lot to the government's LPG strategy. It talks a lot to their mixed energy plan strategy. It talks to the corporates and the minds around sustainable development goals. So it's my business to understand what I'm trying to do, how does it align to their objective? Because if I get that alignment, I'm then able to show them how supporting me becomes critical for what they're trying to do. So I think that's important.
So it's a value exchange. It's me, I give you this and you give me that. That's
Absolutely.
how that's how important partnership is in the corporate space and business. I think that's why most people miss it because you think, oh, I don't have an office, but you can come up to a person and say, Ish, can I borrow your space, that this one room, because I'm gonna be borrowing your space, I'm gonna be using your camera for this 1 week, since I'm gonna be borrowing your. That's how partnerships play a role in helping individuals, pivot in their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you call it because it's about that. It's about value exchange, right? What value am I getting? Because even you started this work because there's value that you want to derive out of it, right? I'm probably also sitting here with you because there's value I want to, almost share because I love sharing my journey as part of my mentorship and paying it forward. So we are having this conversation because there's that value exchange. And I think it's important in every aspect of what we do. Yeah.
What advice would you give to young Black South Africans who are looking to change lives and build a successful business like you did?
I think nobody's coming to save us. I think nobody's coming to solve our problems. And we need to start being the ones which are standing up, folding our sleeves and getting the work done. As I said, start where you are with what you have. There is no time or there's no perfect time. A lot of times I talk to people and they're waiting for funding or they're waiting for something. And I always say there is no perfect time. Sometimes just start. Sometimes the secret is just starting. And I mean, that's your testimony, right, of starting this podcast. Sometimes you just start with what you have, and help comes while you are busy, right? And I think it's also important for you to talk to people about something that you are doing and not something that you're thinking of doing, because there's a difference. If it's easy for me to sell Hakem because it's a business that I'm doing, I've got data, I've got results. Unlike saying I'm thinking of doing something, then it becomes very difficult, right? Um, I think lastly, find your people, find your people, find people who believe in you, find people who remind you of who you are, how strong you are, and also find people who are strong in the things that you are not strong in, right? Vulnerability is not a weakness, it's a strength. So I'm surrounded by a lot of people who are really good at things that I'm not good at. I mean, I'm just a business strategist who's extremely passionate about impact, but I'm surrounded by very strong technical people, operational people, people who gets the work done, So it's also important to really understand what you're good at and the things that you are not good at. Find people who are good at those things so that they can come and complement you. God is a big part of who I am. So I lean quite a lot on my faith as well, because I truly believe that it's okay for us to work hard, right? And I work hard, but I've also seen what grace can do. I've seen what God can do. I've seen how God can just snap a finger and connect you to the right people, and overnight, all of a sudden, something happens. So I think that's also important. It's very important for me. Yeah.
Just closing off, in terms of politics, a lot's happening in this country. I want to know your view on, is there still hope for the young Black South Africans in terms of this dip of unemployment rates that has been going on for since 2008? It's past 2 decades, past almost 2 decades now. You've heard in Germany the unemployment rates when it was its lowest, it was below um 30%, maybe let's say 30%. America, 38%. Um, but after a few years, it actually went up, and the economy they started building the economy the way it is now today. And this country has been in so much downfalls. Is there still hope for these young, hungry Black South Africans? And I want to hear your views on some topics and conversations about corporates. Are corporate really helping businesses, young entrepreneurs?
I do think there's hope. I think there's hope, and perhaps for me, the hope is in us. It's in the actual young people that we're talking about, right? Because I think, Langelihle, it's also the time is gone for us to fold our hands and sit in the corner and wait for somebody to come and do something for us. And we have also seen the power of entrepreneurship, that we are probably actually the ones which are going to create more jobs than corporates will ever be able to do, right? So I think for me, and I'm saying this without undermining how hard it is, because I've traveled the journey, I know how hard it is. But I think for me, we need to be at the forefront of the change that we want to see, and stop waiting or expecting for somebody to come and do it. It's us who really need to be out there on the forefront and getting it done, right? That's number one. Number two, I'm very careful of politics. I'm aware of them. I know what's going on, but I'm very careful of how I allow them to change who I am, because a lot of people are very negative because of what they consume from the news, what they consume from the politics. And I'll rather spend that time empowering myself, building my own career, building my own business, and start finding out who are the right people who need to help me to do what I need to do. I've been very deliberate as well in the kind of news that I consume, because also there is a narrative, right? There's a narrative that bad news always sell. And that's why every time you switch on your TV or radio, you don't see this podcast. You don't see the work that you do. We only see how many people were raped, how many youth is unemployed, how many, and there is so many gems in the country. I meet those entrepreneurs on a daily basis. There's a lot of amazing people who are doing amazing things. And because they don't make it in the front page, it looks like it's only bad and horrible things which are happening. So I've made a conscious decision to look for those people and talk to them all the time, because that's what inspires me. It inspires me to see that a lot of great work is actually being done, and perhaps this is a challenge for you, young people, as you studying this podcast and studying this new wave of news, to be deliberate about showcasing the good stories of South Africa, because there is so much good that's happening, right? It's just that a lot of times we just counting all the stats. And I'm not saying they are not there. I'm saying there is also the other side where so much great things are actually happening. I also do hope that artificial intelligence is going to support a lot of young people, because that's your thing, right? You guys are good at it. I just see how you guys are easily able to navigate things. And I mean, now you can build a business plan literally in like 30 minutes, using AI. So I do think those are some of the resources that are coming through that we can leverage on, and keep knocking, guys. Keep knocking on those doors. They will eventually open. Keep asking. Somebody will eventually say yes. But giving up is just not an option for us. And I think that's what I love about being South African. We're just a bunch of resilient people. We just very resilient. So I think for me, we're looking forward to a lot of young people like yourself who just resilient, who just go out there. They don't take no for an answer. They just keep going, because eventually that's how we're going to start winning. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Refilwe Sebothoma. It was an honor to have you on the platform.
Thank you for having me. And I really wish you all the best as well. I pray that you start finding the right partners who can support you to build this platform, because I do think it's important that other young people can see and know that we can actually start from humble beginnings and grow into great, great businesses, So all the best. And again,